All right, good morning. Today we are in the shape part of that second module. We're in shape 2.02. Um, we are also in the second half of the Degas module as we're looking at how Degas used shape in his works of art as well. In 2.02, we are seeing what is shape? We know that shape can be organic, can be a geometric. Um, we know that we have a three-dimensional shape. We call that a form. Those are things we should have hopefully learned in elementary school about those basic ideas about shape. We want to look specifically, though, at how Degas was able to use, um, excuse me, let me shape in his work of art, and we're going to kind of look at how he used geometric shape versus those organic shapes. And my module is just not working properly. Let's try this again. Seems to be a problem. Ask for help. All right, let's try this again. All right, we did line last week. Come on, shape. Make it work. If you all are having the same difficulties getting through your modules, you may have to reset your computers. It happens a lot. Every night you should be shutting your Chromebook down and restarting it. I do that with my computer and still yet have some issues. And so, first of all, we're going to look at the idea of drawing shapes accurately. You can take a look at this as an example of this drawing of a guitar. Learning how to draw accurately means you're able to see the objects as shapes. For example, you may not think that you can draw a guitar, but you can break it down to its basic shapes. And we're going to look at how Degas did that, how he broke down the spaces around him, and all artists do this, into the very basic shapes that they can create. We're also going to look at how artists use line in creation shapes, particularly contour lines, and the idea that that contour line follows the outside shape of those objects. When we look at contour drawings, um, the drawing the edges or the contours of figures is called contour drawing. It's one of the it is one continuous line, not always. This is a what we call blind contour. Very often, the artist will look at what they're drawing and begin to draw without ever looking at the paper, always looking at the subject of the drawing. And by doing so, you can train your brain to work with your hand to draw as accurately as possible what your brain is seeing without ever having to double check back and forth. And so it's a really good exercise that artists use. But those contour drawings are going to be paramount as artists begin to work out their compositions, looking for where they want to emphasize particular shapes, how shape and line and that space is going to be created to use to create the focal points to move our eyes and so forth. And so when we're talking about how artists use shape and we're looking at these contour shapes, specifically we're going to be looking at Degas, and this is that second half of the Degas module. We're on page 10 of it, and we're going to look at how Degas brought these organic shapes of the dancers of figures. There's one of my very favorites is this very solitude woman sitting very solemnly by herself on a bench, like in I think it's on a bus or station, and it's a beautiful drawing. Maybe she's next to a table, but in any event, it's a beautiful drawing. But it captures a lot of emotion, but in doing so, mostly because of this very elegant shape that he's created, and the way he's captured her, and how she kind of opposed as opposed to some of these other geometric shapes that go on. And we can look at how he's done this sort of same thing here. When we look at this drawing, for instance, we can sort of see this black bold outline that goes around that contour shape. Now, these are gesture drawings, and we talked about gesture drawings last week. We're going to look at how you're going to use those gesture drawings again this coming Thursday in our Make Day, and how we're going to use those gesture drawings and put them in a space created with geometric shape. Seems to be a problem. I guess there is a problem today. Lord goodness. Canvas is a wonderful thing when it works. I really do like it when it's working properly. Let's hope it's going to continue. Recreating movement. And so, looking how you can create those lines, those flow lines. Again, uh, when we studied, or when we take a look at Van Gogh was big at using these bold lines that showed movement. Very often, those contour lines can be used to show the movement, particularly if you want to show the movement of a contour of the shape of an object. We can use those contour lines to kind of show that shape. Representing yourself and others through symbols. This is kind of a neat thing because it kind of helps you understand how to break things down into these basic shapes and the idea of looking at symbols, these ideas of logos, things that kind of represent a larger idea. When we talk about icons and things like that, if you've got icons on your web screen, those are little symbols when you click on them. An icon is a little thing that represents a larger idea. We think of icons a lot as the little thing you click, which represents that larger program. But icons can be individuals who represent a larger movement and all types of things like that. And so when we're looking at how artists create um, these symbols and representational images. One of my favorites is Keith Haring, and this is one that they're showing here. Keith was a fantastic graphic designer and artist, and if you look, these shapes that he's created are all very much about that contour shape, looking for that outside edge, that outside line that creates that object. And so we're going to look today at how in a couple of very specific Degas paintings, he's using the elements of shape and line to create space, to create depth, and that sort of thing. In your studio time, we're not going to do that one as our studio time. We're gonna do a combined drawing, and so we're first going to look at those ideas of contour sketch. The idea that you're going to capture these large, bold shapes, and then use that to kind of work out your compositions. You're going to look at how you can use those gesture drawings, those using those little quick sketches that capture the movement, the motion of your subject within that space. Time spent. Remember, they can be. These shouldn't be taking you a very long time. You know what we're looking at now is how you're going to use your sketchbook. You're going to use these simple ideas of creating. When we're talking about contour lines, bold shapes, quickly capturing the idea of space, gesture drawings. All of these are quick, quick, quick. You know, these aren't long, in-depth sketches. You're not going to spend days working on these. The individual gestures that you might kind of capture, kind of work out what you're going to put in your final drawing, might take just seconds, 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds. These contour drawings where you're working out your space and figuring out your depth and so forth. Probably only a few minutes as you start to work through how you want to get your angles and so forth together. So all these things will going to come together, parts of a whole, and they're going to combine to create this space, the use of the shape, and all these elements are going to create um, this idea of depth that you're going to get a um, a sense of things going back into this space, and sort of as we look at how those are going to be created using again basic shape, geometric shape, those linear lines that create, that go back to that focal point. We've talked about single point perspective a little bit. We're going to look at how that's used today. And then those gesture drawings that create those organic shapes. We talked a little bit earlier. I mentioned that the woman sitting on the bench. We want to think about when you're capturing those gesture drawings and those contour lines, and you're getting those basic shapes. How can you express emotion? How can you capture the mood, the activity, the story? Where I can tell stories through the simply capturing those gestures. So you can look and see. Here's a couple of examples. Manet, I love Manet. This is a very simple line sketch that he's created here. And so we get a lot of emphasis on this idea of the contour line that captures the outside shape. And that shape is representative of an individual who's kind of slumped over. His legs are sort of crossed. We can tell he's not engaged in a lot of hyperactivity. He's not jumping around doing anything active. Um, Again, he's because the way his hands positioned, he's holding his hat. We can kind of get the impression that he's intending to sit here in this position for a long while, probably thinking about something. Um, These figures, however, very different, and we look at how the mood and the emotion is different. These dancers, you can see, are captured in movement. The dancers look like they are preparing, and so as they are preparing, you can see maybe that concentration on the face of the young lady whose head is turned. We can look at the other lady who's the young lady who's looking down towards the foot, making sure maybe that she's prepared and ready to go on stage. The young lady fixing her hair. So we see that there's this moment captured, and we see sort of what's going on in that moment, the preparations, and it might sort of bring with it an emotional feeling of anxiousness. You can kind of almost feel that anticipation that these dancers are experiencing. Over on the right, you see these dancers, and because the movement and the expression, those simple gesture drawings, those simple contour lines are capturing the outside shape of the arms and the hands, the body, the feet, the leg brought up. You can tell they're engaged in a dance, and you get that sense of activity, that of interest that's created by this pose, and you can see and feel the energy as her leg is lifted up, so we can kind of feel those emotions through those drawings. So we're going to talk a little bit before we leave here today about how we're going to kind of translate what we've learned so far up into what we're going to do on Thursday in our drawings. And to do so, we're going to look at an example of a Degas drawing here and painting. And first of all, I want to point out with just let me turn this up just a little bit. I'm gonna use this red to kind of point out geometric. How's he using geometric shape? And if you look, why is this at an angle up at the top? Why is that line going at an angle? Because he's showing that perspective. If we talk about single point perspective, all of these lines that run parallel to each other, all these lines that are in the floor, all of these lines that run in the same exact direction in the ceiling, and I can't hardly get to the. Let me pull this down a bit. Oh, there we go. The top of that doorway, all of those are going to point to a single point that we call the vanishing point that's way off in the distance. And it would be up into our upper right. And if you could extend those lines out indefinitely, they will all point to. Let me do that a little better. That was really ugly. But they will all point to. There we go. That's much better. A point, a single point that's way off the distance on our horizon line that's going to be recognized. And our horizon line is probably somewhere in about this. Whoops, was a little low. Somewhere probably about here. Very likely he was just a little taller than the dancers that he's capturing here. We can sort of see the top of this young lady's head. We can sort of see the top of this gentleman's head. So we get the impression that the artist, their eye level is going to be just above this little. I'm going to put my eye here so we can see at the eye level. And that eye level of the artist represents that horizon line. Now we're going to look at how did he use geometric shape. I want to go to a different. So now we're going to look at these geometric shapes, and we've got this dancer here, and we can see that we've got these dancers that go back in space, and he's even using that or those organic shapes to demonstrate that perspective, because again, if we put little lines across the tops of those girls' heads and across their feet, hey, they're also going to point to that single point perspective. Just like our the boards get smaller as they go back in space, our figures, our individuals get smaller as they go back into space. And so that's again using those organic shapes, these individual organic shapes to demonstrate that depth as they go back into space. is how he is using both geometric and organic shape in this work of art. And the other way that well, the other thing we can sort of recognize is sort of the contrast. Again, when we have two elements that are very different, big and small, light and dark. Um, in this instance, geometric and organic. Um, there's sort of an element of interest that becomes developed. And so a lot of the interest that's created in the cool shapes that the individuals make. I mean, when we look at this gentleman standing here, his arm is on this cane, and we see there's sort of a tension that's developed. And a lot of that is created because what's surrounding these very organic shapes of these dancers are these very geometric shapes of the walls. This is a rectangle back here. This is a rectangle that goes back in space. We have rectangles here, these very geometric shapes. We have a rectangle here. So if we could see through, we would see that those shapes that we're seeing, these rectangles here, are what provide emphasis. And look even here in the windows in the back, and help provide interest and emphasis on those organic shapes, and help us really focus even on those gestures he's created for those individual dancers. This week on Thursday, we're going to be looking at how you all are going to use single point perspective, create an interior space, and how you're going to add gestures into it, how you're going to use contour lines to create the basic shapes of those organic shapes versus those geometric shapes created by your interior spaces, the walls, windows, doors, that sort of thing. Thank you all very much.